Hey, welcome to Half the Battle. Today, we'll be looking at Airborne. And also, at Airborne. Yeah, I'll get into that later. This figure from 1983 has, once again, all original body parts. Note that his head only moves from left to right, since this was when they still used a swivel joint for head movement. As you may have spotted, this figure broke when I took it apart. This gives me an opportunity to briefly talk about one of the most common and easiest to fix ways a GIJoe toy can break: a snapped O-ring. Sometimes this happens due to too much stress being put on it, like when you want to make the toy do a helicopter punch. Nobody else did that? No? Just me then. Sometimes they break due to regular wear and tear. After all, these O-rings are under constant tension when inside a figure. Usually the rings just go a little slack, so the figure won't break, but sometimes the rubber degrades and snaps. Remember, never use 30-year-old rubbers. It's incredibly easy to fix though. As you've seen me do, you can take a figure apart with just a screwdriver, and you can find similar O-rings in hardware stores or even online. Just make sure you keep track of the screws, because they're very tiny and can very easily get lost. Well, enough screwing around, let's get to the actual figure. The figure is, well, to be honest, kinda bland. I'm struggling to think of anything good or bad to say about it. One thing I do like is the detailing on the very top of his torso, showing a turtleneck. That's pretty nice detailing for 1983. I do have one interesting bit of speculation regarding this figure. Airborne is described as a helicopter assault trooper. Yet he didn't come with a vehicle, he was sold carded. When you couple that with the fact that the Dragonfly box art has him on it, I think that originally that helicopter was supposed to come with two figures, him and Wild Bill. On to the file card. For some reason, in the order of battle book that reprints text from file cards, his name is hyphenated. It isn't like that on the original file card. The information is interesting, to say the least. For one thing, this guy is a lawyer. After studying law and passing the bar, he joined the army. He stated he'd rather jump out of airplanes than write legal briefs. Wait, so then why is he called a helicopter assault trooper? Oh, right, his secondary specialty is helicopter gunship gunner. More reason to assume he was originally meant for the Dragonfly. Secondly, Airborne, whose real name is Franklin Talltree, is a Navajo. They handle this in the file card by saying, "You look at him and sometimes he's looking right through you. Must be the Indian in him. The Navajos call it the far-seeing look. Spooky." Yeah, I didn't add the word spooky. That's right there in the file card. Gordon Bennett, 1983 was a different time, wasn't it? Well, we can only go downhill from here, so let's look at the cartoon. Usually, he'll be one of those guys standing in the background, getting an occasional line, but nothing noteworthy. The exception comes in the episode Operation Mind Menace, where we find out that both he and his brother, like all Native Americans I'm sure, have psychic powers. Yes, really. So of course, Cobra wants to use Airborne's little brother as a weapon, by increasing his supernatural abilities. I'll get into it more when I eventually review this episode. So the thing you can take away from Airborne is dude who stands in the background. Oh, also psychic. Spooky. Yeah, I added the spooky this time. The cartoon creators apparently decided that the far-seeing look equaled psychic powers. His comic persona is thankfully better, even if he doesn't show up much. You'll see him occasionally as a gunner for the Dragonfly, which makes sense since that's one of his specialties. He's only really featured in one story arc, where both he and Spirit are tasked with keeping an eye on Snake Eyes, who's on leave. It's a good thing they do, because Destro, Firefly and a Crimson Guard are on a mission to kill Snake Eyes. The difference between Spirit and Airborne is striking. Airborne is portrayed like an average Joe, no pun intended. Him being a Navajo is just one aspect of his character. It doesn't define him. Teamed up with Spirit, who is such a stereotype I'm surprised he doesn't do a rain dance every time he appears, the contrast couldn't be more apparent. It's like they did this on purpose. As if they're saying, see, we know not all Native Americans act like Tonto over there, so shut up about it. My final thoughts on Airborne? Well, I'd like to have seen him more in both the comic and in the cartoon, as he's a more realistic character, let's ignore the psychic part here, than the more heavily featured Spirit. So that was Airborne. So now, let's talk about Airborne! Yeah, this is kinda weird. As far as I can tell, this is the only time in the original toy line when two figures have been given the same codename, but are completely different people. This guy looks nothing like the original Airborne. Now I know that isn't anything new, since new versions of toys have been known to have different hair colors, different uniforms, but this is a little bit different. Like I mentioned earlier, Airborne is called Franklin Talltree, while this guy is called Robert Six. We're never given an explanation as to why this guy is called Airborne, or what happened to the original. Near as I can figure, Hasbro said, hey, we still got a trademark for this guy, let's use it. They could have done so much with this. Considering all the times you have a fake Joe show up, imitating the original, they could have used this for an interesting take on that trope. The figure's body is almost entirely a reused mold. Only his head is an original sculpt. The body comes from Lift Ticket, the Tomahawk pilot. This Airborne was part of the Sky Patrol, a sub-team who all used previous body molds with a new head. Sky Patrol's mission was to blind the hell out of any kid who wanted to play with them. Not only does every figure come with a shiny silver parachute, that I have no hope whatsoever of fitting back into the case by the way, but the vehicles were all previously released toys that were giving a shiny silver color. I never cared for these vehicles much. Their original forms were much better and wouldn't blind you if you wanted to take them outside to play with in the sun. That's why I've repainted one to make it look more traditional. I do, however, like this figure. The color scheme works, and you can forget to notice the body isn't original if you don't go looking too much for it. That's a good way to reuse a mold. There are bad ones. Ugh. The helmet is a bit goofy though. It is, however, made of a soft plastic, meaning that, unlike last week's Aero Viper's helmet, this one won't damage the paint on the head. As far as this guy's personality goes, we only have the file card to go on. It states that he is one of the most popular members of the Sky Patrol, because he assembles their parachutes and acts as their combat medic. So he's only popular because he has their lives in his hands? To be fair, it does also say he'll run through gunfire and such to get to an injured comrade, so there's that. That's it. Anything else about him is up to the imagination of the child, or man-child. See you next week, everybody, when it'll be time for Halloween and a scary GIJoe story. Okay, it probably won't be that scary. Well, glad I wrapped up another one. Now to get a refreshing drink. Hey! Who the hell are you? I'm Timmer. But I'm Timmer. Yes, but I'm your replacement. The newer, better model. Oh, you think so, huh? Yeah, I'm not going for that crap.